Welcome, everybody. We're going to be talking about some more interview content from Kyle Brink, the executive producer for Dungeons and Dragons. Talked about a couple of different things he said in some other videos, but during today's live stream, we're going to be talking about a different perspective, some other stuff that was said that kind of made me scratch my head and go, huh? So if you're watching this during the live stream, awesome. If you're watching this as an episodic format, because I pulled this out, this is the point of the video where I get to say awesome. Don't forget we stream live every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. Central Time, This Week in Tabletop, if you want to tune in for those. And of course, if you're watching this in episodic format, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss an update as we continue to talk about tabletop and other things here on the YouTube channel. So without further ado, let's kind of dive into this section. I think what's interesting to me, the interview that we covered a couple of days ago was mostly focused on the statements of how Wizards of the Coast wasn't being respected by Hasbro and they didn't have enough authority in the conversation and there was all these committees going on and Kyle Brink was like, I'm going to step up and make that no longer be the case and now we've got control and Cynthia Williams is now going to be, the one running the show and there's no longer going to be committee involvement and I don't know if that's actually true. I think a lot of people have watched the interviews at this point and said, well, first and foremost, you're not actually giving interviews to any of the media outlets. You're only talking to specific influencers, which makes it appear as though you're doing a very targeted public relations campaign as opposed to actually sitting down and answering hard-hitting questions. But one of the things that struck me, and I didn't talk about this in my last video, it was something that came up during additional research and reading this article over at Wargamer. Um, Kyle Brink claims that changes to D&D's OGL 1.1 were not made in response to money lost from the D&D Beyond boycotts. Now, again, the last time I heard anything about this, there were over 50,000 people who canceled their subscriptions to D&D Beyond, and there were more than 70,000 people who signed the petition to tell them to get bent regarding the OGL stuff. But that apparently had nothing to do with their decision to roll back the 1.1. Um, so we'll read through this here. It says, although Wizards of the Coast offered apologies and chances to give feedbacks on new drafts, it ultimately blacked down on plans to change the OGL 1.0. We already know about that. Instead, releasing the D&D system reference document into the Creative Commons. It says here during the interview with Three Black Halflings that Brink gave on February 6th, he said, we were already working on that document before the folks who decided to stop subscribing decided to start doing that. Um, Kennedy, one of the people interviewing, said that the delayed response from Wizards came out not long after a massive D&D boycott. Said it can't be coincidence, surely. And Brink responded with, sure it can, because it takes a long time to modify a legal document when you have a lot of stakeholders. It can't turn on a dime, and so it couldn't have been turned around in response to the decline in subscription because that would have been too fast. It would have been too short a period for a corporation of our size to pull that off. I don't buy that for a minute. When there is a crisis going on, and you are getting word from everybody about everything, um, they didn't make a rapid fire decision to turn that around. That was not something that happened quickly. That was something, remember, they were silent for like a week and then continued to not say anything for days after that initial response of you're going to hear people say that they won, but the reality is what they did, but we won too. Like there was a lot of time that happened, and for them to claim that they didn't make a course correction as a result of all the boycotts, I think that that's malarkey. Claiming that it's just coincidence, I think, is very disingenuous to people who have half a brain, especially to people who crunch numbers and play tabletop for a living. So it's one of those things where I just don't buy it. Especially when you go over here to, there's another article over at Dicebreaker when they have another clip where they said it was killing me. Brink told Kennedy and co-host Jeremy Cobb, he says it was killing me that it was taking so long. OGL 1.1 was a terrible way to approach the goals we had in mind, which is why it was such an easy U-turn for us to make. When you have a bigger community, you have a bigger duty. So hang on, if it's killing me that it was taking so long. Terrible way to approach the goals we had in mind, which is why it was such an easy U-turn for us to make. But yet you're saying that you didn't make the U-turn because of the reaction. You made the U-turn based on the feedback that they were getting. He says here, Wizards of the Coast was already in the process of revising the OGL 1.1 document before the leak. He says by the time the 1.1 version of the document was made public, we had already abandoned a lot of the things that were problematic because of the feedback we were getting. We just hadn't published that update yet, so nobody could see it. That's partly why 1.2 was so quick to come out after 1.1, because we had already been heading in that direction. The 1.2 did not come out quickly after the 1.1. It was a couple of weeks. Like, I don't remember the exact time frame, but it was not a rapid fire turnaround. It was something that took a lot of time while you guys were sitting there being completely silent with the community. So this is the thing that people have been pointing out, is it just doesn't seem genuine when you actually dig into what the outside was seen. Could it be coincidence? He claims it can be. I just don't think it is. But that's my personal opinion. I don't have any insider knowledge. That's just me being a halfway intelligent, reasonable, logic driven human being. Um, yeah. When asked about the week's delay between the leak and Wizards' first official response, Brink said it was a long delay that came out of many good small decisions. We were working on this document and we thought at this point people need to see actions, they don't need to see words. So let's make sure this is the version we want to release. Ah. You have enough stakeholders, each wanting to make it a little bit better, and perfect got in the way of good. Perfect got in the way of done. The silence was because we didn't want to say words at a time when words weren't going to cut it, and the thing to release took too long to perfect, and it compounded the silence. It was an environment where there was already such a lack of trust. Every word we knew would be scrutinized, and could be radioactive. There was honestly a fear of making it worse, a fear of saying the wrong thing and throwing gas in the fire. We felt like we felt like we were screwed if we spoke, and we were screwed if we said, and if we're screwed if we said we blah blah blah. We let me try to say that again. We felt like we were screwed if we spoke, and we were screwed if we were silent. The best thing we could do is just deliver and give you a thing that was better. In hindsight, that obviously wasn't the right decision, but that was the mindset at the time. The mindset of who? Because again, we go back to him claiming in other places that he wasn't aware of a lot of the things that were going on or the decision making. He still claims that he doesn't know who put out the original statement of, you're going to hear people say that they won but we won, too, and everything else. There's just a lot that doesn't add up here when you start analyzing what actually went down, the conversations that were made. Now, there is something to be said about silence, and actions speak louder than words. But at the same time, um, at the very least, they could remember they made that vague tweet. They said, we've heard you. We'll have a statement coming out soon." And remember, they didn't say, "We've heard your concerns." They said, "We heard your feedback," and it was like, we're not giving you feedback. We're telling you that what you're doing is wrong. And what's really ironic to me is that the idea that that 1.1 was something that was going to get thrown away before the leak was ever out there, that they were already working on the 1.2 based on feedback. What feedback? Because the only people you had given it to at that point were the sweetheart partners that you were trying to get in to give them a better discount. Because remember, that 25% commission, that 25%, sorry, royalty that they were wanting from people, um, had already gone out. And Kickstarter, as an example, had made public tweets how they had gotten that down to 20% for people who did Kickstarters as opposed to 25%. So that this is the stuff like that went out in public, and then Kyle comes out and does this interview and says, "Oh no, we were always going to change the 1.1 and make it to the 1.2. Those changes were already happening. That's why we were able to get that updated version out so fast." if your changes were already happening, then why do you have the head of Kickstarter Gaming coming out and saying that, yeah, we got you this extra 5% back in your pockets, guys, because that 1.1 draft, yeah, that's a thing. Like, that's not just a draft. Like, that's what Wizard gave us. We negotiated on your behalf. We were able to get that down to 20%, 20% down from 25% for those of you who use Kickstarter for your, and that's it. We're good to go. I'm waiting to hear final everything from the Wizards of the Coast team to know when that's going to all go into place and how it's going to affect you. And we'll all know more when they finalize things. Like it was already being finalized, like the 1.1. It wasn't until the entire world blew up and all the third-party content creators went, no, you're not getting 25% of our revenue and the license back stuff and all this other stuff. So when you have things like that out in the public, I just don't believe that they, Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro, didn't make changes based on the uproar and the cancellations and the boycotts and everything else. Especially when you have, like, I just, this morning at 6 a.m., I talked about the recent Bank of America report that went out on Tuesday, where they're continuing to say that or that Hasbro, excuse me, is an underperforming stock that's losing horribly right now, and they are extremely concerned because of not just the Magic the Gathering thing, which was reported on back in November, but also because the boycott against all things Dungeons and Dragons. So this was a situation that was exploding around them. So again, this is just one of those things where I wanted to kind of dive into this a little bit more because I just again, I get that actions are louder than words, but you can't sit there for weeks, and not say anything. And when you do say something, it's an extremely vague tweet. There's also the issues, and this is another thing which we can cover here in this segment of the video, is um, what happened to the conversations around why is everything being pushed through the D&D Beyond website, right? Like any official communication has come through the D&D Beyond Twitter and the D&D Beyond website. Why not publish things through the Dungeons and Dragons website, or better yet, the Wizards of the Coast website? Why is it all going through D&D Beyond, which is a product? It's a you're trying, and I think it's because they're trying to push everybody to D&D Beyond as the official place for all things communication related to Dungeons and Dragons, which makes me wonder, well, what's the point of the Dungeons and Dragons website? What's the point of the Dungeons and Dragons Twitter? What's the point of the Dungeons and Dragons Facebook page and so on and so forth, unless that's just going to become their marketing wing and they're just going to share like trailers from films, trailers from videos, video games, excuse me, and press releases related to upcoming products. I don't know, but it's another weird cog in the wheel, so to speak, as to what's going on with all of this. So it's just an interesting thing, looking at the conversations that have happened around um, the last few weeks. And Kyle Brink out there doing interviews, but not with any actual media outlets, only with like specific influencers. I don't know. I feel like if they really wanted to make a statement, they would make a statement and get a press release put out there, and more importantly, put Cynthia out there. Like he mentions her in. Let me go pull up. I think it's the other article here. I'm gonna scroll down. I gotta find it here. He wanted to say that authority being given to the Wizards staff is now flowing directly from Cynthia Williams, the president of Wizards of the Coast and digital gaming at Hasbro. So why wasn't authority going from her in the first place? If it says president here, but I thought she was the CEO of um, Wizards of the Coast. Maybe I'm mistaken on that, but it says president here. But it's an interesting thing because she has a position at Wizards of the Coast. She also has a position at Hasbro, and the CEO of Hasbro, or the president, the guy who's there now, used to be president at Wizards of the Coast. So everybody's double dipping, and it's a weird thing. But we have heard nothing but radio silence from Cynthia Williams, and I still come back to, why is Kyle Brink the person out there doing all of the public relations when he's just the executive producer. He's not the head of marketing. He's not the head of public relations. He's not a legal entity for Wizards of the Coast. Um, is he a genuinely concerned individual who's trying to take charge? Some people say that he could be, but when I see all these interviews going out there and it's not, I don't see actual interviews being done with media outlets. I see interviews being done with influencers, which makes it suspect to say the least. It doesn't, again, going back to what they claimed, it could just be coincidence. It's not coincidence. It's targeted public relations. Anyway, food for thought. So this will be where we wrap up this particular episodic content moment, portion, whatever you want to call it. If you're here for the live stream, stick around because we're going to be continuing to talk about other things during the live stream, which happens, of course, every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. Central Time, and I pull sections out like this for the week. If you like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon, of course. Smash all of those buttons down below if you want to support any way you can. Super thanks, super chats, memberships beyond. You can pick up a copy of our tabletop sourcebook and the first module over at our Patreon page. It's that world map behind me. There's a Discord as well. Links are all down below. There's a point and click adventure game and a book series that you can get involved with as well. That's it for the episode, folks. Until next time, stay safe and happy gaming.